Linnis can, okay, I'm seeing Dr. Nalini has started recording. Thank you so very much. And may we have one more person, please? Okay, so I am going to start our introduce our first session in the hopes that everything is going to be just fine. So for those of you who know and for those of you who don't know, Toastmasters International recently celebrated 100 years of existence. And we in Division F have been celebrating via club activities, and this is our second Division F activity, this health seminar, because I believe that health is wealth, and it's very, very important that we do all that we can to maximize our health. So with that being said, I would like to introduce our first session for this evening. And our first doctor to present today is Dr. Nalini Maharaj. She is a primary care physician too with the Southwest Regional Health Authority. She holds a master's in public health and business administration and a postgraduate diploma in family medicine. She has been recognized in the Ministry of Youth Development and National Services as second up in the category of Youth Resilience in Youth Awards. And not only that, but she was the valedictorian in the second cohort of the National Leadership Training Program in 2024. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, please help me to give a warm welcome to our very able facilitator, Dr. Nalini Maharaj, and her segment, Mental Health in the Modern World. Over to you, Dr. Nalini.
Hearing me?
Yes, I'm now hearing you.
See my screen?
Not seeing your screen as yet. And your camera is off as well. I don't know if you plan on coming on camera. I hope you do.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen on my side. Yeah. Screen. Right. Tell me if you're seeing it now.
Yes, we are seeing it.
Right, good. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, especially since October the 10th was World Mental Health Day. And it's given me great pleasure to exchange ideas with you all on mental health. Before I start, I just wanted to open the floor to hear what you all thought about mental health. When you hear the word mental health, what comes to mind?
Stress.
Having some mental problems, some issues.
Yeah. Yes, very much so, eh? So I got this little picture that have some, brainstorm ideas, and you all were right. Stress dealing with the brain, a part of health, a part of healthcare, sadness, psychiatry, being sick, needing help, right? And a lot of the times we deal with stigma. So I am also having some technical difficulties here as well. Right, so stigma, when we think about stigma with mental health, it's still very much a relevant topic today. And, you know, we may think that we don't do it, but simply as making comments with things like mental health is just an excuse to live off benefits and not contribute to society. Or everyone has anxiety and struggles with depression, deal with it, it's all in your head. Statements such as those do reflect stigma, whether we like it or not. It's still very relevant in Trinidad and Tobago society. So hopefully after this talk, we can, you know, be less, have these less negative implications towards mental health. Similar to any basic human right, because this is a sidebar of health, it is a basic human right to have good mental health, right? It is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to their communities. Of course, it also plays a key role in decision-making, building relationships among your spouses, friends, family members, and shaping the world in which we live in. And of course, again, it's crucial to personal, community, and even your socio-economic development. So let's look at what mental health is versus what it isn't. So we know that mental health is something we all need to look after. It is something that everyone has and has to deal with. It is definitely worth making time for. Mental health can be both positive and negative, and it's part of being a human being. It's definitely on a continuum. We won't be happy every single day. We have a lot of, you know, circumstances in our lives, and some days we'll be happy, some days we'll be sad, some day you'll have fears, right? It is changeable, so it is dynamic and it will change from day to day. It is very important. Mental health is a very complex and real factor of life, but it is not something you can just snap your finger and get out of it. It is not something you can just decide to have one day and then tomorrow it's gone. It's not always something negative. It's not an interchangeable term with disease and illness. It is not about feeling bad all the time. And it is definitely not a sign of weakness. It is not all in your mind. It is not what we call fake news. And it's not something to be shameful about. And it's definitely not fixed. So when we think about mental health, I want you all to think about all spheres of life. Think about a wheel. And each part of your mental health is influenced by something in your life. Professional, definitely. So remember, while you're at work, take that lunch break. Leave work at work. When 4 o'clock reach or whatever time, you know, you try to leave those stresses behind. Go home to your family and you know, just clear your mind. Take your vacation and of course set boundaries. Know it's okay to say no at times. Physical health. We talk about regular medical care, eating healthy, regular sleeping, exercising, getting a massage, or even as something as enjoying physical intimacy, such as holding hands, hugging each other, right? We also have the psychological sphere, where you really need to take time for self-reflection. So whether it's before you jump out of bed or at night, think about what you have done for the day and what you want to accomplish the day after. Sometimes we may need some therapy or counseling. We may need to try things like meditation. Keeping a journal is something, if you are not a very good verbal communicator, it is worth having a journal. Being creative or joining a support group. And there are lots of support groups in Trinidad and Tobago. You can find them on findcareTT.com, right? And there are different things available there, whether it's domestic violence or families in action. There are a series of NGOs available there. There's the emotional side of things. So explore a hobby, cuddle with a pet, Get involved in your community. Practice self-love. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. Again, not every day is going to be the same. The spiritual side of things. Definitely be able to practice forgiveness, spend time in nature, connect with a spiritual community, sing, dance, practice yoga, or volunteer for a cause, because giving back is very, very motivational and self-rewarding as well. And lastly, personal. So plan and set those goals, and it links with your psychological, so that when you take time to self-reflect, you need to make sure that you are accomplishing these goals, spending time with your family, and learning a new skill, reading a new book, making time for friends, and definitely try to reflect on who you are and what makes you special and unique. So, most stressful jobs out there. What do you all think are some of the stressful jobs? Hearing me?
Being a doctor.
Being a doctor, yes. Y'all are seeing my screen, by the way? Yes?
Not
No,
anymore.
not at the moment.
Yeah.
After the first slide, we weren't seeing anything.
Let me see here again. Yes, screen. Let's get that up. Right. Are we back on track? Yes.
Yes.
That's good.
So we would have only seen the first slide.
Very good. Right. So this was the wheel we was talking about and going through here. And I'm just reminding you all it's all about balancing these 6 key factors. And most stressful jobs out there. So actually being a teacher, surgeon, a policeman, a pilot, firefighting, bartending, and a nurse. So anything that has to deal with servicing people can be really stressful, right? So mental
We
health.
could extend, sorry for interrupting, but I think we could extend a stressful job to any job with a poor work culture, because most of the time, the job though be stressful and is dealing with people is be stressful.
Definitely. Definitely. So in terms of our adulthood, there are stages in life from being born all the way up to death. So I focus on adults as this was the target audience. So depending on where you look, you see different age groups for adulthood. So according to the World Health Organization, we look at young adulthood, middle adulthood, and the older adults. So a young adult is someone who is 18 to 26, and they deal with a lot of transitions, whether it's entering college, workforce, securing housing, starting a family. And they really need to have positive mental health and well-being in this young stage of life who can help people meet these transitional changes successfully. So the key thing to remember is transition in that young stage. In the middle adulthood, it's 27 to 64 years, adults face stressors related to jobs, parenting, caregiving, and relationships. And the final stage is over 65, where people tend to be isolated as they go into retirement. They may face serious illness, or they might have to deal with death of close people, right? So they really experience social isolation. So what are some general risk factors for mental health? So one is poverty. We know that persons who are in the lower class of socioeconomic status, they won't be afforded the same opportunities, whether it's in education or just general life experience. Drastic life changes, something as simple as becoming a mother, can lead to postpartum depression. Daily hassles, just getting up every day, hustling to work, beating that Port of Spain traffic on a daily basis can be, having a negative impact on your mental health. Violence, trauma, and war. Whereas we might not be experiencing any sort of, country wars, things like traumatic events, whether it's a burglary, whether it's, some sort of physical abuse or something like a sexual assault. All those are traumatic cases. Social isolation and loneliness, as we mentioned, comes really within that late adulthood. And it's because of our transition in life. We have lots of people now who aren't having as much kids as before, And when they do have kids, they tend to migrate. So in terms of our expanding aging population, care for these elderly really falls on a friend, a neighbor, and even some of these elderly care homes where the treatment isn't always the best. And of course, we have persistent conflicts within the family. So we do know that children who are exposed to conflicts at a very young age tend to affect them negatively. So there really is a saying, if you feel your children are not paying attention to you, they are like sponges and they absorb everything. So we want to also recognize that there are protective factors to mental health. So overall resilience. So what does resilience mean? It's basically when you get knocked down, how do you cope? How do you get back up, right? Problem solving skills. Yes, something didn't go your way today, but how do you deal with it? Do you find a solution, a resolution, or do you turn to something negative, such as excessive smoking or alcohol use? And there are many studies that show that these smoking and alcohol use can increase your possibility of developing depression and anxiety, as well as needing more medications for mental health illnesses. We need to really be aware and know that there's access to any sort of physical health care and mental health care in Trinidad and Tobago in our public and private systems. We need to practice having positive peer relationships. So you don't want that friend who will carry you and don't bring you back, right? So you want the friend who will say, let's go exercise today versus let's go down the road and drink a bottle of white oak, right? You want to have positive adult relationship, even amongst spouses. You don't want somebody who is always belittling you or, very abusive to you. You want someone who will support you. A safe environment, and of course, having good interpersonal and community connectedness. You really need that social relationship out there. You can't just do it alone. Cultural and religious beliefs that also discourage suicide as well. So let's look at worldwide what mental health looks like. So of course, we mentioned that it is important overall for your essential health and well-being. It really impacts how we feel, think, and act, and influence our ability to cope with stress, build relationships, and make choices on a very daily basis, right? So let's look at the US. In the US, this is 2019 to 2020 data. In the US, almost 1 in 5 persons experience a mental illness. In Asia, 1 in 10 persons would have experienced a mental or substance use disorder. And in Europe, it's almost 1 in 5 again experiencing mental health disorders. So there's a wide range of disorders when it comes to mental health, ranging from bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, eating disorder, personality disorders, and of course, post-traumatic stress disorder, which we are seeing more of every day. So it is not only just adults being affected. On the 2 scale of things, less than 17 and the over 65 age group, about 15% in these ages experience mental health illness issues, right? And of course, the young adults which undergo the transition phase in life is the most affected by mental health illnesses. And lastly, the adults, which is in that middle age category, about 20 to 23% deal with mental illness. So let's look at what it looks like in Trinidad and Tobago. So mental, neurological, and substance use disorders and suicide cause 16% of all disability, adjusted life years, and affects 31% of all years lived with disability. So just looking at this box here on the right-hand side, you can see about 1/3 of our disability is from mental health issues. Double would be non-communicable diseases. So hypertension, diabetes, strokes, heart attacks would be double that of mental health. However, this is expected to decrease by 2030, and mental health is actually expected to keep on rising. So in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, both genders are affected by this mental neurological substance disorder and suicide. But as you go down the causes amongst men and women, it changes. So men tends to have more self-harm and suicide, alcohol use disorders. And there are many studies out there that show men are just generally higher risk takers compared to women. Women tend to suffer with more headache disorders and depression. That can be linked even to our hormonal changes. So just a reminder, healthy, active living, 4 wings that we want to focus on. Social health. I spent a lot of time telling you the importance of connecting with people, understanding your own self-worth, having good support system, and being able to cope with stress. Spiritual help is very important to give your life purpose and provide stress relief, help you develop those support systems in a healthy way. Mental health, dealing with that stress, coping with change, overcoming negative feelings, and maintaining a positive outlook on life. And of course, we want to be reminded that physical health is linked with that mental health to fight off diseases, recover from illness, and perform daily routines without feeling tired. And just some general tips for your mental health improvement: talking to friends, having that good night's sleep, at least 6 to 8 hours, eating that balanced meal, sharing your feelings, being creative. You have to know you have to know what works for you in relaxation. I might want to color a page and that might help me. You will be different. You have to really know yourself. Exercising, we recommend 150 minutes moderate exercise weekly. And of course, dealing with your stress levels. So I just want to remind you about this iceberg effect. Sometimes people don't talk, even personally. We don't share what we go through. So you might just see a little something off on top. But when you actually go deeper and you look under, there are a lot of things that don't really come to the surface. And you never know who's going through what out there. So I just ask that, you be respectful and give support to any person that you meet. So I thank you for your time, and I hope I was able to shed some light on mental health in our modern world today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalini. Thank you so much. And you most definitely shed some light on mental health in the modern world. I'm sure that each and every one of us can say that we learned something or that we were reminded of something this evening. So that brings us to the end of our first session. And we would move right into session 2. Our second presenter today is Dr. Christoher Romain. And Dr. Christoher is a Toastmaster and a medical doctor. Dr. Christoher is also one of the area directors for this Toastmasters term in Division F, Trinidad and Tobago. He is very much into physical fitness, exercise. He's a great communicator. As far as Toastmasters goes, and Dr. Christoher is an all-round good guy. He is very committed to good causes, and he received his BMS in 2015 and his master's in 2017 from the University of the West Indies, Monarch. He currently serves as a general practitioner at Nova Medical Center, and he does medical research with the Arima General Hospital. He also serves as an area director for Area 30, and Dr. Romain is passionate about theology, and fitness. He believes in improvement in all areas of life to serve for the honor and the glory of God. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our second presenter for Health and Wellness seminar this evening, Dr. Christoher, Romain.
Thank you, Madam Division Director. To my fellow Toastmasters and specially invited guests, and to my fellow colleagues, good evening. I am Dr. Christoher Anthony Romain, and this evening I shall be presenting to you on the 4 pillars of health. Firstly, I just would like to define what health is, and the most common and accepted definition has been from the World Health Organization, where health is described as the complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So when you think about health, and you were to think about the entire person, what aspects would you look at for someone who is healthy? Of course, there's the foundation of all health, which will be nutrition, and one of my colleagues shall speak on that a little bit later. But when you look at what helps build from that foundation of nutrition, what keeps someone healthy, I would like to look at 4 key pillars to health. They are sleep, sunlight, hydration, and exercise. And of course, to get a holistic approach to health, one must consider the spiritual aspect of health. But for this evening, we shall just look at these 4 pillars. Our objective shall be to observe the recommendations for each of the 4 pillars of health. We shall also aim to appreciate the benefits of maintaining such pillars of health, and of course, to apply a practice to improve and maintain each of the pillars of health. Once again, just to remind you, these are the 4 that we shall look at. They're sleep, sunlight, hydration, and exercise. And firstly, we'll look at sleep. When it comes to sleep, one thing to note is that how much sleep you require is dependent on your age. If you are a newborn baby, just came out of the womb, and I don't think I see any newborn babies here this evening, but they tend to have a varying pattern of sleeping. Some days they may sleep just a few hours, other days they may sleep for the entire day. So there isn't a set time per se for newborns, but what is recommended is that you allow them to sleep as much as possible. When the babies get a bit older, especially between the months of 4 months to 1 year, what is required for them is to get at least 12 hours of sleep and at most 16 hours of sleep. This is the optimal amount of time for them to grow and develop, especially when it comes to brain development. As children get a bit older, especially in the toddler years, you want 11 or 14 hours of sleep. And of course, for children who are now going into preschool and infants, 10 to 13 hours of sleep is recommended. As they get older, the sleep hours lessen. But remember, these children are growing children. They require sleep to help keep them healthy, especially with that brain development. So as a child is within the age range of 6 to 12, you need 9 to 12 hours of sleep. When they become a teenager, and this is where things get interesting, teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep daily. In this phone age, I don't know how many of them getting that much sleep. And of course, for adults, whether you're from age 20 to 120, the average optimal time for sleep for adults would be 7 to 9 hours. Now, one person might think, well, why I need to sleep so much? What are the benefits to getting adequate sleep? The first thing to note about the human body, especially the brain, is that the brain is always working. When we sleep, the brain switches its level of activity and the type of activity that it does. And one of those functions of the brain during that time is to help the body strengthen its immune system. So during the hours of sleep, the body works hard to help repair any broken tissues. It helps reinforce anything that is learned throughout the day. It makes any adjustments or adaptations and overall strengthens the body. So adequate sleep is good for having a strong immune system. Additionally, sleep tends to lower the stress hormone known as cortisol. When you get sufficient cortisol in your sleep, what tends to happen is that your cortisol levels remain low. And as such, cortisol, even though it is good and healthy for you, too much can increase your blood sugar level. It increases your blood pressure levels, and also increases the risks of clot formations in the blood vessels, which can lead to heart disease and stroke. Another thing to note, when it comes to the stomach, you have something known as lectin. It's a hormone in the body that helps manage your appetite. When you get enough sleep, the body produces sufficient lectin so that you're better able to gauge and manage how much food you eat in the following day. But if you don't get enough sleep, what tends to happen is that you have the opposite hormone being released, which is gelatin, or ghrelin, my apologies. And when you have a high amount of ghrelin, your body has a stimulation of its appetite. So persons who are sleep deprived are more likely to eat more. And of course, if you're awake for longer, you're also more likely to eat food to keep your body active. So persons who are sleep deprived have a full, strong correlation with obesity. Additionally, lack of sleep is known to reduce your tolerance with glucose, or a better way to put it is increase your insulin resistance. And when your body is resistant to insulin, it requires more and more insulin to help to manage your blood sugar levels. And once you start to have that imbalance in sugar levels, you run the risk of becoming diabetic or obese. Another thing to note with sleep is that it improves your cognitive function. Remember earlier I stated that when you get adequate sleep, during that time for sleeping, what happens is that the brain tends to rework its memories. It starts to rework anything that you would have learned throughout the day. So sleep is a great recovery period for the brain to convert short-term important work into long-term memory. And of course, during that time while the brain is working, it also cleans out waste products from the brain. And one key waste product to remember, if you can recall it, would be something known as beta amyloid. Now, beta amyloid is just simply a chemical that is produced in the brain and accumulates over time. And when you accumulate beta amyloid, you tend to have forgetfulness. And having that sustained forgetfulness over a long period of time increases your risk of Alzheimer's. So that's one of the ways where persons who don't get enough sleep can end up having poorer cognitive function, meaning that they can't remember things well, they can't process well. And if you ever think about it, you ever had a day where you did not sleep, and when you wake up, you feel very groggy, you feel very forgetful, you can't think straight. And when you can't think straight, on top of that, you feel very irritable. You didn't sleep in the night and you have to go and drive down the road, and then somebody gets you angry easily. Lack of sleep has been linked to instability in your moods, If you have bipolar disorder, it tends to increase your manic phase, meaning you're a bit more aggressive or more willing to take greater risks unnecessarily. It can also increase your risk of depression as you lose that chemical balance within the brain that helps regulate your emotional hormones. And of course, if your emotional hormones are off balance, you tend to have a worsening mental health. So what can we do to ensure that our sleep is good? Firstly, I would suggest that you try to set up regular sleep and wake times. Try to go to bed and get up at the same time each day. That way you set a nice habit and pattern within your body. Secondly, I would say to avoid using screens, preferably 1 hour before bed. What tends to happen is that the blue light from screens, and some of the latest studies state that even the blue light filters do not help that much. But because you're always getting that light shining in your eyes, the brain thinks that it is a prolonged period of daytime, and that throws off your natural rhythm for your sleep-wake cycle. And because of that, you have a lot more difficulty falling asleep. So what is required is that you should take off any screens. Don't watch TV before bed. Don't use your tablet before bed or even your phone before bed for at least 1 hour. And then you lie down in a cool, dark room where you're comfortable and the bed is soft and nice and nobody's making any noise, nobody's stressing you. And you will see that your mind starts to set itself in a sleep mode. It's a way to help prepare yourself to sleep better. And of course, you use some relaxation techniques to help calm you down. In terms of don't drink caffeine or have a late meal or smoke any cigarettes. Those things tend to be stimulants to keep you awake. Try not to work in your bed or watch shows in your bed. You want to form a strong mental connection with your bed and sleep. And of course, don't self-medicate on sleep meds, particularly melatonin and Valium, because your body tends to build up a resistance requiring higher and higher doses. This is an important thing to note. If you have a persistent sleep disorder despite practicing good sleep hygiene, you should see a licensed physician so that you're able to get a prescribed medication that can be closely followed up. Next, we'll talk about sunlight. And sunlight is one of the freest and healthiest things you can give to yourself. Now, to meet your daily requirement, you must consider where you're living. So you must consider the weather, the time of the day, the location, the skin exposure, like how much of your skin is exposed to the sunlight, and of course, your skin tone. Now, yes, it is stated that persons of darker skin complexions require more minutes of sunlight exposure. However, for the large part of human history, persons of a darker skin tone lived in areas where they had more intense sunlight, per se. So they still would have gotten an adequate amount of vitamin D or UVA and UVB radiation that is healthy for the body's function. So for example, if you live in a tropical climate like Trinidad and Tobago, you really only need 3 minutes of noonday sun to meet your natural daily vitamin D requirements. And the sunlight just needs to be exposed to 25% of your body, which would be your face, arms, hands, and your neck. So all you can do if you want to get enough sunlight in the day, just take a step outside for a few minutes and you come back in. If you're living in a more temperate climate where they have 4 seasons, the seasons where you tend to get the most amount of sunlight, such as spring and summer, what is recommended is that during the hours of 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., you try to get either 8 to 10 minutes of sunlight on 25% of your body. For the cooler, darker months of the year, they still recommend getting midday sun as much as possible, but your sunlight exposure can be a lot more different. Because the place is cold, you have to be wrapped up in these thick clothing. So at most, probably just your face or your neck will get exposed to the sunlight. And if that is the case, a minimum of 20 minutes of sunlight a day to as much as 2 hours of sunlight a day can help you maintain your natural or daily recommended sunlight exposure. My question is, why it is we need so much sunlight? Well, first and foremost, you have a very important vitamin that is very good for boosting your immune system, your cognitive function, your calcium balance that helps keep your bones strong, and even help with the contraction of your muscles. And that is with vitamin D. When sunlight touches the skin generates vitamin D. So naturally, in the Caribbean, you technically do not need vitamin D supplementation with tablets unless you have a known vitamin D deficiency or you have enzyme or hormonal disorder that requires additional supplementation. And if you get that benefit of sunlight, you tend to have a stronger immune system. You have a much better improved sleep quality because you're helping your circadian rhythm or your sleep-wake cycle. You also tend to have improved memory and cognitive function as vitamin D serves a role in that. You have a boosted mood, and an interesting thing that was recently found is reduced blood pressure from sunlight. What they found was that when sunlight touches the skin, the UV radiation from the sunlight helps release a chemical known as nitric oxide into the blood vessels. And that tends to open up the blood vessels so that there's less pressure within your blood vessels. It's a very recent and interesting study, and they're continuing to do research on it. The best practice for sunlight exposure, just take a brief walk outside, as I said. It's good to exercise outside. Use a broad spectrum sunscreen for prolonged sunlight exposure, at minimum a SPF 30, and a broad spectrum sunscreen is one that covers for UVA and UVB. Thirdly, I'll look at hydration. When you look at hydration, the adequate amount of hydration that you need depends again on your age, your weight, your activity level, and the environmental temperature. If you're exercising often, you remember you're sweating, you're going to be losing a lot of water. So you need to supplement even more water on top of that. Of course, if you're doing anything in a very hot climate, you're going to need more water than, say, if you're in a cold room where you're not losing as much water. But on average, men require 3.7 liters of fluid intake over the 24 hours, while women require 2.7 liters. For those of you who are pregnant or plan to become pregnant, you need to have a slightly bit more water or a little bit less water depending on which stage of pregnancy. Because remember, you're no longer caring for one, you're caring for 2 persons or 3 or 4, depending on what your ambitions are. And of course, with children, because the weight of children varies and because children grow quickly, they normally give the recommended fluid intake based on weight and age for them. And the recommended fluid intake tends to be half an ounce of water for each pound that they weigh. Now, the benefit of having adequate hydration is that it helps you become very efficient in transporting nutrients and oxygen into your cells and the removal of waste products. It also helps aid in digestion and prevents constipation as the body uses water to either absorb into the intestines or absorb out of the intestines to move nutrients and to also remove waste products. Adequate hydration also helps you regulate your blood pressure and your body temperature. And it helps maintain a good metabolic balance. Things such as the electrolytes, particularly sodium and potassium. And of course, it helps keep your blood pH closer to a neutral zone. And finally, management of your blood glucose. Now, for diabetic patients, One of the key things that tends to go wrong with many diabetic patients is that they get dehydrated quickly. So one of the most important things to remember as a diabetic patient is to monitor and maintain the level of hydration that you're getting with water. And it's key because in cases where a person's blood sugar levels are out of control or they run the risk of getting a severe crisis with elevated blood sugar levels, for example, what we call diabetic ketoacidosis, where you can end up in the hospital because your body cannot sufficiently control its blood sugar levels because it is too high. What tends to happen or what tends to resolve such problems is adequate hydration. And many times patients come in and their blood sugar levels are high, but with adequate hydration, it actually comes back down within a manageable range. So always be mindful of your hydration status, especially as a diabetic patient. And of course, you age a lot better. Persons who are well hydrated, the skin does not wrinkle as quickly. They do not get deterioration of a lot of their muscles or bones as quickly, simply because the body uses the water to help maintain. Remember, as I said, it helps transport key nutrients and remove waste products. So that helps maintain any deterioration that can occur with aging, or rather prevent any rapid deterioration. Of course, with the best practice for adequate hydration, choose water as your beverage of choice. And of course, try to limit your sugar intake to less than 25 milligrams a day and your salt intake to less than 1500 milligrams a day. The reason being is that you want to help balance the amount of electrolytes metabolically going into your body and also your sugar intake so that your body has less stress to help manage how it deals with its hydration status. And of course, monitor your water intake, especially on hot days. Finally, I'll talk about exercise. And the recommended physical activity for exercise varies from person to person. But the general consensus is that you should try to be as active as possible. And what they recommend is that if you want to do intense exercise, try to do intense exercise at least 1 day a week. Or if you want to do moderate levels of exercise, 2 days a week at least. It works quite well for most persons. And light activity, such as walking, you can do every day or as often as you are comfortable. Do remember that some physical activity is better than none. And you've never seen an obese 100-year-old patient or person. So think about it. Spend your time. Doesn't have to be anything too excessive. Simply because once you're exercising and you're keeping some level of activity, you reduce your risk of chronic disease and cancer. If you have chronic diseases, persons who exercise don't require as high a dose of medication to keep them fit, or rather to keep them healthy. Additionally, they have an improved level of cognitive function, meaning with exercise, your blood supply becomes a lot more efficient, whether the heart is pumping or even the creation of new blood vessels, especially to the brain. So it helps you function well to manage and regulate your mood and also keep yourself very healthy and sharp on your mind. Additionally, with the improved mobility and flexibility, you reduce your risk of osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, meaning that your bones remain strong and healthy. And of course, exercise has been proven to improve every system of the body. So if you want to exercise, you can choose between light, moderate, or heavy exercise. And the examples are here, where light exercise is just walking, or some mobility exercises would involve just getting up and making sure to move the joints in the full plane of motion each morning. That way you get that nice stretch in, and it's what you call an active stretch. And of course, if you want to do more passive stretching, things like a stretch and hold in place, things like yoga and Pilates tend to work quite well. For moderate exercise, where you up the intensity a bit, some stuff like swimming, jogging, weightlifting, or resistance training is good, and I would recommend doing that. If you do have problems with your joints, you can probably use some of the lighter impact exercises such as swimming or jogging. Aquatherapy works wonders, especially when you get a bit older. And of course, for those of you who go hard and want to train for the Olympics, powerlifting, sprints, calisthenics, gymnastics, if that is for you, you go ahead and you do it as much as you comfortably can. And what I want you to know is that you should focus on becoming healthier and improving your performance over weight loss. So I want you to focus on becoming healthier. Focus on improving your performance. Things like your weight will drop, your heart rate will be at a lower rate, your blood pressure will be better regulated. All of that works out there. So remember, for the 4 pillars, sleep, sunlight, hydration, and exercise, they're key to your health and key to build on that foundation of nutrition. And they help connect it to your spiritual health as well. Thank you very much. These are all my references for those who are interested.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christoher, for that very detailed presentation. Thank you. At this time, we are going to go into our third presentation. And our presenter is Dietitian Dianne Charles, and she is going to be presenting on Meal Choices Matter, Bite by Bite. Distinguished Toastmaster Dianne Charles is a God-fearing, meticulous professional, adept in nutrition and dietetics, both at the hospital and community level. She has 44 years of experience in nutrition and dietetics, both in hospitals and community settings locally and throughout the British Virgin Islands, where community dietetics opened a whole new world to maximize opportunities to empower and encourage the client and enhance personal skills. She's a graduate from Robert Borden University in Scotland and the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. She's also a registered dietitian of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and a past president of both local and regional nutrition and dietetic associations. She's a certified breastfeeding counselor, a distinguished Toastmaster, and has a passion for the game of cricket and an addiction for the game of chess. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, please join me in giving a warm welcome to presenter number 3, Dietitian Dianne Charles.
Thank you very much, Madam Division Director, area directors, presidents and executive members, specially invited guests, and other fellow Toastmasters. It's really great to be here today, especially in a different scenario, and to share a bit of my passion for food is my passion, more so being able to impact lives through nutrition. It is not my intention today to speak to putting someone on a diet, as people may come to the dietitian and consider that to be, but it's more seeing if I can get you to look at lengthening your life by lessening your meals, as was said by Benjamin Franklin. And that word lessen, we're going to see it in different lights. It does not just mean quantity, it will also mean quality, and even has a bit to do with the when and the how much. you eat. So most of my discussion is going to be on, first of all, to identify the basic principles of nutrition. And I'd also like you to appreciate the link between diet and disease. So let's look a bit at nutrition basics. I know that a few of you, if not all of you, have been in the habit of hearing a lot about proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. Yes, that's what we learn. But we don't go to the grocery to buy that, do we? We go to the grocery to buy foods. And within the Caribbean, we have divided these vitamins, minerals, proteins, carbohydrates into 6 food groups. I'm going to deal with it in couplets. We have first the go foods. Those are our staple foods, our yams, dasheen, our flour, oats, the breadfruit, the rice, the corn, the plantains, and our fats and oils. The ackee, the avocado pear, yes, those are in our fats and oils. People may eat it in the Caribbean as a vegetable, but they are grouped in fats and oils. We group foods according to the majority of that nutrient within the food. Therefore, these go foods give us energy. And it's important for you to appreciate and understand that, because now, today, there is a mantra: stop eating starchy foods. And fat is the enemy. And maybe by the end of my conversation, my discussion today, we're going to see if fat is really the enemy. The second group of foods are our grow foods. These are our foods that contain protein, also have a little bit of calcium, potassium, fiber, but these are the ones that will help us to grow. Certain processes are taking place in our bodies. When we are small children, yes, that's why milk is a good food, because milk helps that baby to grow. Protein is important. Meat is important in our diets. There might be vegetarians among this audience. One is not saying that you cannot grow with vegetarian diet, but are you complementing your protein foods? So on the legumes have protein. They are not complete. They are missing an amino acid. In nutrition, we group our foods in different categories. And within the protein foods, we have amino acids. You will get milk, eggs, cheese, complete protein. Egg is a good protein food, a cheap protein food. But when you're not eating the animal foods, you've got to mix your legumes with your peas and beans, with your staples, or with milk. So for example, you wouldn't have a meal of legumes and salad. So don't say you're going to have just chana with tomatoes, lettuce, cucumber, where you're not getting protein there unless you tell me you're going to drink a peanut punch, or probably you're going to have some peas, some rice with that, or potato with that. That's why doubles is a very nutritious food, because it has the chana and it has the flour. Combined together, they make a fantastic protein, complete protein. However, it is in the way it is prepared, and it is how much you consume that will be the wrong thing that we wouldn't want you to do. Then we have the glow foods. These are the foods that contain our vitamins and our minerals to give our skin that lovely color, keep our defenses up so that we don't get the cold as often as we are getting it now. These are our protectors. So they help us to glow, but they also protect us as well. So what is healthy eating? I mentioned about the basics, and we take these food groups, we put it together in this plate in the Caribbean. And if you look at this picture, it gives you a better picture. You probably will question, why are the starchy foods more than the fats and oils? No, I want to tell you, look at the little triangle with the foods from animals compared to the legumes. We are urging the populations, please cut your meat down. Cut your meat down. The meats now, and I mean, we don't have the time to go into all the detail, but the meats now are not as how they used to be in Granny's days. Okay, the fruits and vegetables, we want to get more of that on the plate. And when we are eating the staples, we are pushing our ground food. So it's about mixing the foods in the right way. Eating healthy is about the right balance. A lot of times we think of side dish as starchy foods. Yes, so in the Caribbean, we will call plantain breadfruit, yam, as a side dish to a peas and rice and a macaroni pie. But look at that plate. That plate has more starch than it has vegetables. Whereas here, the right balance we are looking at is half the plate almost with your vegetables and quarter of your plate with your little protein, your meat and your peas, and the other quarter with your starch. What is healthy eating? It is also about adding more whole grain, adding more fruit and vegetables, limiting the foods eaten away from home, and limiting your meats, processed meats, and poultry. It is about the right timing. Dr. Romain spoke just now a little bit about the importance of timing. And you look at this picture, you might think, wow, I don't have time to eat like that. Okay, we're not speaking about eating knife and fork meals, so to speak, every time. But if you don't have the right timing, you're going to end up with problems later on. And we're going to probably touch on that in a while. So as we move on to diet and disease, we know that literature is telling us that more than 95% of all chronic diseases caused by food choice, toxic food ingredients, nutritional deficiencies, and lack of physical exercise. It is the choices we make that my emphasis is here today. And I'm going to look at 3, maybe 4 areas. We're going to start first with fat in the diet. Now, without getting into the rocket science, I'm going to just quickly browse through these fats because you have heard about them. They are saturated fats found mainly in animal foods. All that nice skin on the pork, the skin on the chicken that we like to buy when we are frying chicken. Okay, that they blow up, they put the baking powder in that batter and they leave the skin on. So we are really paying. You peel that skin off of that fried chicken, whether you eat it from Chefettes or whether you eat it from KFC or wherever you eat it, it's going to be too much fat. And dairy products, we have to watch it. So a lot of us out there may be having problems with cholesterol, heart disease. We've got to start changing our fats. We want to move more to the unsaturated fats, olive oil, grapeseed oil, coconut oil, not to be too expensive. There's no need to buy avocado oil when we have avocados. Polyunsaturated fats, soya bean, omega-3 fatty acids, our salmon, our mackerel, our herring. So fats are not just in butter and oils. Fats are in our foods as well. But then we have these trans fats. These fats that are processed in the lab, as I see, by a process called hydrogenation. And of course, trans fats are more solid than oil, making them less likely to spoil. So of course, the businessman wants that. Trans fat helps foods to have a longer shelf life. Trans fats help foods to have less greasy touch. They're fantastic things for the businessman. But why are we concerned? Trans fats will increase your bad cholesterol in the body. Okay? And this cholesterol is important. We need cholesterol. Most of it is made by our body, but we also get from food. And as I keep telling persons out there, it's only about 45 to 50% coming from the food. Cholesterol is you and me. Okay? Cholesterol has a lot to do. Dr. Romain talk about exercise. If I'm not exercising properly, my good cholesterol will not increase. Okay? And sometimes if I'm stressed out, Dr. Maharaj would have spoken about the importance of relieving stress in your body. So we want to make sure that we get more HDL, more good cholesterol, and less of the bad cholesterol. So as we just look quickly at these pictures, you see a nice clean blood vessel as we move from my left to right, and the blood vessel, the blood flowing freely. Second picture, less flow, cholesterol building up. Last picture, it builds up to such an extent, that's when the problems start. And look at the food that we're eating. We got to admit it, okay? We go to buy pizza. Remember, it's the choices we're making. I am not saying here that we don't eat these foods. I am saying to you, I'm creating an awareness tonight, okay? One slice of pepperoni pizza will give you 19 grams of fat. You're not going to count the fat. I counted it for you, okay? And the average person at any pizza outlet is going to have about 2. If the slice is a little thinner, you may have 3, okay? You multiply that by 19. Look at how much fat you got that evening in that meal. Then you maybe have your doubles. Here in Trinidad, it's mainly a lot of people have this at breakfast for their breakfast. One alone is 11 grams, and I am told that the average person has about 4 standing up at the vendor and then wash it down with a high sugar drink. And so we go on. Okay, we've got to just be careful. I am saying, let us be careful with our choices. You know, you go on a Saturday morning to buy your doubles. Why are you coming back at lunchtime and going to buy fried chicken? And then for dinner tonight, you're probably having fried bacon, saltfish. Watch your choices. Let's look at sugar in the diet. A sugar is a sugar is a. It's not just S-U-G-A-R. Therefore, label reading is important. Glucose, dextrose, fructose, confectioner's sugar, sorbitol, mannitol, molasses, all of these things are sugar. So if you tell me, oh, I don't drink a lot of Coke, but do you drink a lot of molasses drinks? Do you take a lot of things that might have maple syrup in it? Just be careful. Don't look at sugar as the white sugar only. Now, we are more concerned about the added sugar. That is where our problems lie. And men, we allow a limit, men about 9 teaspoons a day, and women about 6 teaspoons. This is added sugar. Okay? The dietary sugar coming from natural sugar, from milk, that's lactose, coming from fruit, can be controlled. If you're a diabetic, well, then I will probably control that a bit more. But fruits, that's good sugar, but we don't want it overdone. But it's the added sugar. How often do you go for the sodas, the candies, the cakes? I am not saying no. I am saying you're going to choose a breakfast cereal, choose the natural one, not the one with the sugar on it. What you're going to do, you're going to add milk, and you're going to use your natural sugar coming from your apple or your banana to add to your cereal. Okay? Watch it. Read your labels. Look for the words. So how does your sugar stack up? Ladies, when you have that time of the month, or even when you want to relax on a Sunday, and you want to take the little candy or the little ice cream, is it 1 slice of chocolate cake you're taking? That's 15 teaspoons of sugar. Okay? And 1 teaspoon of sugar is 20 calories. So multiply 15 by 20. Look how many calories you got already in that chocolate cake, or even in the ice cream. Not saying no. And I said 16, so it's 16 to 20. I'm not saying no. I am saying low. Let's look at sodium. Oh, we love it. I want that food to be tasty. I don't want it to be salty, excessively salty. And when you suffer from conditions like high blood pressure, kidney disease, these things will need you to watch the sodium in your diet. Processed food, naturally occurring at the table and during cooking. Yes, that's what I want us to look at. You see that processed food? We've got to watch it. We've got to watch it. Okay? The naturally occurring will come from our meats. Yes, before we even season the chicken and the fish, they have sodium in it. That is the word, not S-A-L-T. S-A-L-T is a sodium compound. So when you want to choose the pink salt over the white salt, remember the key word is sodium. There might be different terms. One might be sodium chloride, one might be sodium, what is it? That might be oxide or something. Another one, sodium, the nitrates in the sausages. The word is sodium, not S-A-L-T only. Okay? So the rock salt and so the iodine might be purer and so, but it is still salt. Watch it. Don't go spending money, and next thing you know, your blood pressure is still going up. A teaspoon of salt contains about 2,300 milligrams of sodium, and that's about a day's supply for most people. But look at these, coming back to our same fast food. That same pizza, slice of pizza, 1,116 milligrams. I just told you 2,300 is our daily supply. Look at how much in one slice. Look at how much in doubles. Look at how much in the chicken and chips. People have a business to run. They're not going to take the sodium out for you. You have to be aware of how you're choosing it when you're eating it. Do you have to buy fry? Do you have to do it every other day? And I just put chicken here, but we have our favorite. We have the saltfish and the akra and the fried bake, our local stuff. Okay, let's watch it. Fiber in the diet, very important. We are getting too many situations that we are seeing in the health centers with persons coming in with constipation, little children coming with stomachache. Why? They're not taking enough of the fiber. coming from these food groups. What does fiber do? Fiber works on the colon. And all that water that Doc was just talking about, it has to match with this. Okay, we've got to eat high fiber foods. That's why we want to push the peas and beans and we want to reduce the meat. That is why a lot of the problems we are experiencing now, the minute you go in the toilet and you're straining, something is wrong. If it is that your stools are like the little goat pellets and they go plump, 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 something is wrong. If your stool floats, something is wrong. You've got to look back. These things are critical. All this is part of health and wellness. Same thing with your urine, the color of your urines. We don't want a dark orange, neither do we want a clear, transparent urine. We want that little lemony yellow color. These things are all important. Water must match with what we eat, and we heard a lot about that. And watch that alcohol. Watch it. It carries calories. It also, all of the alcohol becomes sugar in your body. Let's watch it. Alcohol tends to be a stress reliever. Okay, and we notice it a lot after COVID. We're going to notice it again after the Christmas, after the Diwali, after these festivals, when people have a nice time and they have their parties and they're using excuses for watch the alcohol intake. And as we're closing up, read your food labels, quick guide to food labels. This container contains 8 servings of an item, but the serving size is only 2/3 of a cup. So the 230 calories or the 8 grams of fat or the 3 grams of protein is equal to that 2/3 of a cup. But to you, you might say, nah, 2/3 of a cup is too little bit for me. I need about twice that. You multiply the 230 by 2 or the 3. So remember, when you're reading food labels, it's the serving size that is the quantity. When you're reading food labels, turn it around. Don't just look at the front or the side. Anything that you see with more than one type of sugar, forget it. Avoid it. I don't care how good it tastes. Because all these other sugars, what in heaven's name they have to have all these sugars in that for? Read it. We have labels. You have high blood pressure, you're feeling for a little snack, we have the lightly salted. Doesn't mean you eat as much as you want. You look for things in water. You look for 0 added sugar. You look for unsweetened or no sugar added. Non-fat. We have the labels. You just got to read them, but you still have to be careful of how much you take. Weight management, we are pushing a reduction in weight. And you know, some of us only looking at on the scale. I want us to start looking around the waist as well. Okay, take that tape measure and measure around your waist. We have the body mass index chart. That's one way that we can find out your weight and against your height. We can also know your waist from your waist circumference. We want the woman to be up to 35. We'll stretch it a little, 36. We want the men 37 to 40 inches. Okay, we also have the waist to hip ratio that we use. We want the men to be around, say 1. We want the women to be about 0.8. So we use 1 as a nice little benchmark. Doc talked a lot about exercise, but I will end with that the importance again, and I will reiterate that we need to end to make sure we are getting in exercise. Eating healthy food fills your body with energy and nutrients. Imagine yourself smiling back at you saying, thank you. I want you to believe in yourself, and I thank you for your attention tonight.
Thank you so very much, Dietitian Dianne Charles, for that comprehensive all-round presentation.
You're welcome, Madam.
Healthy choices. We're encouraged to make healthy choices, healthy food choices. She's not saying no, but we have to watch it. We have to check our regularity, and we need to balance what we eat. Great presentation. I trust that you all are enjoying this health and wellness seminar being hosted by Toastmasters Trinidad and Tobago. We are Division F, District 81, Region 7. And I am Division Director Margaret Bartholomew. We have one more presenter for this evening, and then we are going to go into a time of question and answers. So if you have a burning question for any one of our presenters, could you please put it in the chat, and we are going to deal with as many as we can after this fourth presenter. Our fourth presenter is Dr. Linnis Joseph, and she's a seasoned medical professional with over 25 years in the field. She embarked on her journey at the University of the West Indies, graduating in 1999. Dr. Linnis initially aspired to become an open heart surgeon. Her career took a significant turn, however, as she developed a passion for preventive medicine over surgical intervention. This pivot led her from accident and emergency medicine to a devoted career in primary care and family medicine within Trinidad's public health sector, specifically in St. George's County on the Northwest Regional Health Authority. Throughout her 20 years of service, Dr. Joseph has embraced a holistic approach to healthcare, emphasizing the critical role of social, emotional, and mental well-being in patient care. Her practice has evolved into medical coaching, integrating all facets of health, from physical to mental, financial, social, spiritual wellness, relationships, parenting, and career success. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, please help me to give a warm welcome to our fourth presenter, Dr. Linnis Joseph.
When I get that feeling, makes me so fine. Help me relieve my mind.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters, distinguished Toastmasters, specially invited guests. Good evening. So we are going to wrap up today's health talks with the exciting topic of sexual health. So just to get the juices flowing in the brain, let's take a little stretch. It's been a while. If you can't get up and move around a little bit, let's just do a little something. Whatever you can do where you are. And tell me in the chat, or just say it aloud by yourself, what comes to mind when you hear sexual health? What do you think about? What do you think I'm going to talk about? Sexually transmitted diseases, pregnancy, fertility, birth control. What do you think I'm going to talk about? Just take a quick moment. Being able to keep up, that's a good one. So I'm actually not going to speak of most of these things because every time the topic comes up, these are the things that you hear about. If there's a question on the topic, I will answer. But what I would like to, I love this comment in the chat, taboo. That is very important. Sexual health being taboo. Somebody's been peeking in the notes. What I would like to talk about this evening on the topic of sexual health is the way your sexual health impacts all of you. It impacts your whole body. It impacts your mind.
It impacts your relationships, your sense of self. It impacts all of you. And it impacts each and every one of us as individuals, whether we are sexually active or not. So very often, because most people only think of STD, pregnancy, birth control, fertility when they hear the term sexual health, people who are abstinent, people who are waiting for marriage, they click off, oh, this part is not for me. Am I right? Can't see faces. Anybody want to let me see a face? This is a delicate topic. But being able to see your face and interact with you on this topic would be helpful. So I would like you to think beyond just disease and absence of disease, because earlier we found out that health is not just the absence of disease. It is a holistic, it encompasses your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being, your physical, how you interact with your environment. All of this comes to play. And sexual health is no different. Is anybody wondering what I mean when I say sexual health is relevant to the abstinent person as well? To the virgin, to the person saving themselves for marriage? Can anybody see how sexual health in a holistic sense would be relevant to those people? Anybody wants to unmute and say something?
Yes, I would take a little check at it. You could be talking about things like pH balance, etc., proper cleaning techniques, etc., etc.
Ah, I like that. pH balance, he's speaking about women's vaginas that are supposed to be acidic. So you don't want to be putting baking soda in there to clean it. True story. I heard this from a patient, that they were rinsing themselves out, douching with baking soda, which is the opposite of what you would want in there. So we can talk about the physical health aspect. Thank you so much for being brave enough to speak up. We can definitely speak about the preventive medicine and the physical health aspect of proper care. So he mentioned the female and their pH balance, but also for the male, retracting the foreskin, cleaning under the foreskin to make sure that you don't have a collection of gunk under there that's known as smegma. Smegma holds a lot of bacteria, so it causes the transmission of diseases that it's not usually classed under STDs. It's not gonorrhea or syphilis or whatnot, but you still can get people sick if you have a collection of germs underneath the foreskin of the penis. So that is, it's very good that we mention the topic of hygiene, because there are two problems with hygiene, two extremes that we can have problems. One extreme is inadequate hygiene. Now you have body odor, you have discharge, you have infections. The other extreme is too much hygiene, where people are trying to douche, where people are bruising themselves or irritating themselves by putting strong soaps or strong disinfectants or antiseptics in these areas, right? So that is not recommended. You do not need Dettol or Savlon to clean either the vagina or the penis, just so we have that clear. So thanks for bringing that one up. Anybody else is burning with a topic that they think we're going to be talking about?
Dr.
Anybody?
Linnis, I think that you will be talking about emotional health as well.
Ah,
The importance of emotional health for sexual function.
excellent. Thank you very much. That's why you are distinguished Toastmaster. She could see my notes through the screen. Yes, we're talking about emotional health. I'm going to dive all the way down to the deepest depth of sexual health issues, and I'm going to raise the delicate topic of sexual trauma. So when we talk about emotional issues and sexual health, we often do not think, when we think of sexual health, we do not think, what did this person go through in the past? Was there incest in the family? right? And I'm going to be, it's too late to give a trigger warning. Trigger warning, we're talking some serious topics. If someone has been exposed or violated in their childhood, especially if when they tried to speak to somebody about that experience, they were shut down, they were told they're lying, they were you say victim blamed, victim shamed. So they were made to believe that they tempted the man, they wore something sexy, or sometimes it's a boy, and the boy was violated by his uncle or even a female. And we don't acknowledge the men and their vulnerability in these areas. The reason why I'm going to dive deep is because I don't want to stay down there. I want to swim back up to the surface quick, and take a big breath. When we acknowledge that some of these bad things have happened in the past, and we acknowledge that when those things happened, it left a stain, it left a scar, it left a dent on us, on our identity, on our sense of self, on our feeling of safety. It leaves, we spoke about mental health earlier, so post-traumatic stress disorder. You saved yourself for marriage, not counting that incident we want to pretend didn't happen. And then on your honeymoon night, he approaches you with this weapon of mass destruction, and you freak out. Because you did not envision that you could be triggered, that you can have a reminder of something that happened to you that was not nice, that was not pleasant, that was not processed. So I'm not going to stay long on this because we don't want to stay in this heavy place. I don't want to have to ask Dr. Nalini to have to treat you when I'm finished. So I'm going to quickly shift over into talking about other aspects of your emotional health when it comes to sexual health. Can anybody relate to not being in the mood for sex? Not feeling to be touched, not wanting intimacy? Can anybody relate to a time when you just shut off? Was this time in any way related to things that were going on in your life outside the bedroom? Maybe it was stress on the job. Maybe you were exhausted taking care of the kids. Maybe you were feeling unloved and not safe or not embraced by your partner. You were feeling like, you know, all he wants is sex, sex, sex. He not being sensitive to your mood. He could see you tired working whole day, and he's not tuning in to give you that feeling of acknowledgement. Or he just rushing into it, not giving you the foreplay that you need to build up to the mood. Has anybody ever noticed that your emotional state affects your sex drive, the way that you respond, the way that you feel about it, the way that you think about it? This is particularly true in mothers because they are so exhausted all the time. They are stressed out, they are tired, and they're tired by people who they love, their babies, and the adult baby who helped them make the babies. They are tired, and they know they love their family. So there's this conflict in their emotions. I love you, but I want to kill you. And that contrast, when you are not able to process what it means for you, can just have you in a state that your body now functions or dysfunctions as a result. So I want us to start to pay attention to some of these things. How am I feeling? What mood am I in? What is going on around me? Is my partner open and sensitive to fluctuations? Can he tell that coming up to my period, I may have some PMS and I may be snappy, so he needs to approach me differently? Does he realize that I need attention in this place or that place? To the abstinent person, to the virgin, do you realize how your body's hormone fluctuations throughout the month change your feeling, your sexual desire, your how easy is abstinence at certain times of the month? Are you able to recognize that sometimes your drive is not directly related to who is around you? It may be coming from your own hormonal fluctuations. Why am I bringing this up? I am a firm believer that the more we tune into our intuition and we know ourselves, the better we can make health choices and decisions for ourselves. So if you know that at a certain time of the month, you are a threat and a menace to society in your head, would you make different choices? Would you choose the environment you're going to put yourself into? Or are you going to just drift out into the universe and whatever happens, happens? So I want us to stop and just think about that for a minute. Are we aware of our emotions and how they fluctuate and how those fluctuations impact the choices that we make or the moods that we're in or the variations in our libido or sex drive as the month goes along, or in a given day or a year or a season of life, when you are studying intensely versus when you are at home with free time and a lot of relaxation, when you're on vacation versus when you are trying to get your child through SEA. Are we being self-aware, self-compassionate, and tuning into what it is we need in a given moment? That is emotional health. I want you to chew on that a little bit. There's so much in this that people do not speak about that I just want to touch on everything to just cause us to think deeply about things that we often push aside. And why do we push it aside? Dr. Nalini gave us a clue. She used the word taboo. Because sex is considered taboo, because being a sexual being, being somebody who is sexy or attractive or in touch with your essence, the way you present to the world, the way you are perceived as attractive, unattractive, as, desirable, all this that is part of how you are perceived in the world. It's part of who you are. Now, some people recognize it and they channel it, not necessarily to getting a mate, but some people can channel it and they know that if they're going for an interview, they can be attractive to the interviewer, not necessarily in a sexual way to say, hey, I'm going to sleep with you to get this job, but you can present yourself in a way that makes you desirable by the people who meet you. And it may sound weird. I'm not talking sexual attraction, although I'm talking sexual attraction, because the same sexual attraction energy or the same aura and energy that you give off when people meet you is the same energy sexually in a relationship as it is in the workplace, or when you're giving a talk, when you step into a room and command the space. It comes from a similar source. And when you understand it, you can use it appropriately. When I say appropriately, I know that walking certain streets, I may pass a number of men on the street. If I'm walking up Frederick Street or the Quasi. And I know that if I look too friendly and approachable, I'm going to get too much chatter, too many people hitting on me, flirting on me. So what do? I put on the RBF. If you don't know what that stands for, I'm not telling you. The resting face that says, do not speak to me, I am hostile. So that is me changing the energy that I'm giving off, saying I'm going to cut down the attraction so that you do not engage. Anybody familiar with what I'm talking about? Raise your virtual hand if you've ever done it. Or raise your real hand if your camera on. Right? So what I'm speaking about here is being in control of who you are, knowing your identity, knowing your sexual essence, knowing how to use it appropriately. Because sometimes you're on a job and a particular coworker keeps hitting on you. And you think something's wrong with him. And sometimes there's often something wrong with him. But are you aware of the signals that you're giving off? Now, this is not the same as victim blaming. You did not make somebody violate you. But I have seen situations where people are not aware that they are giving off a flirtatious energy. Anybody knows what I'm talking about? People are not aware that the way they speak, the way they lean in, that their body language says, I'm interested. I used to fall into this trap a lot when I was a teen because I would smile with people and chat and not recognize the messages people were reading and interpreting. And this is something that I want to help women become more aware of. And even men. I had a male patient some time ago who ended up in an interesting conversation with a member of staff, and he did not realize that he was giving off a flirtatious energy. So when the lady said, why are you looking at me like that? He was embarrassed. He felt caught, but I was watching the interaction and he was trying to figure out, why did she come at him like that? I explained to him what he was looking like from the outside. So for men and women, understanding your sexual health, your sexual identity, it comes into your daily life to help you in your relationships, in your emotional management, in your work situation, all these situations. So I know I've been jumping around. You wouldn't believe I actually had a plan, but the involvement of everyone saying what they are thinking, it was worth jumping to connect the dots. Let me just review a couple of things. Your sexual health is more than just the presence or absence of diseases. It's more than planning families and babies and fertility. Your sexual health includes your mental and emotional health, relationship health. It includes trauma, and some of those things need to be addressed because you cannot just outgrow certain kinds of things happening to you and think that if you don't think about it, it will just disappear. So these things may require some more active steps, speaking to your doctor, speaking to a therapist, seeking some kind of professional help to unearth whatever is in there so that it doesn't pop up at the wrong time. People who are abstinent still need to have a healthy sense of self, and a healthy sexual, I try not to say sexual identity because that has a particular meaning nowadays, but your sense of self or the way you see your sexual essence being presented in the world. You need to know when you're giving off vibes of attraction and when you're giving off leave me alone vibes. And you need to be somewhat in control of what vibe you are giving off. So that if you are going into an interview or if you are going into a workplace or an environment where you want people to warm up to you and embrace you, you know what energy you're giving off. And if you're going somewhere where you want to say, listen, I will jump kick you if you tell me good morning, you know how to do that as well. Physical health in terms of hygiene and personal exploration and awareness of your own body is an important part of sexual health for every woman and man. And I can go off into all kinds of stories of people who came to the doctor because they weren't aware of what is normal. So you may need to search the internet and see variations of what a normal vagina looks like, what a normal penis looks like. Let me give you an example. A baby was brought to me in the health center because they thought something was wrong with his penis. And he made it all the way through the nurses, he's screening everything to get to me, for me to, thank God I listened to people and figure out what they're really talking about. The situation was that the father was circumcised since he was very young. And I don't understand how neither the mother nor the father knew what a penis looked like with a foreskin, but they thought the foreskin on the baby's penis looked weird, and they thought something was wrong. And I think that is a sign. These are the kinds of things that have happened in my career that made me make sexual health a priority. Because we need to not be so ashamed or afraid of our own bodies that we can't explore. And if we're concerned, go and research. The internet is available. And just because you're going to look at penises or vaginas on the internet does not mean you are looking at porn. Especially if you are looking on a medical website, or you're looking to see normal variations of vaginas, normal variations of penis size, because there are young men who think that their penis is too small, not understanding that it grows when it needs to grow. And it is normal for some people to have what looks like a very small penis when it is flaccid, and a normal sized penis when it is erect. Normal or adequate size when it is erect. So some of these things we need to explore. We need to just open our minds. We need to speak to our doctors, our gynecologists, your general practitioners, speak to someone, get some help and support, and take care of yourself. Now, low sex drive, especially in women as they get older, you need to be able to recognize where it's coming from. Is it from an emotional source? Is it from a stress source? Is it a hormonal issue? So if you find that you're just losing interest in sex, go talk to your doctor. There's a lot we can do to help. I know if your doctor is dismissive as if that's not a medical problem, you're talking to the wrong doctor. That's all I'm saying. Right? And I would like to, in closing, say that I have decided to wage war on guilt and shame when it comes to sexual health, because guilt and shame does not help anybody to make better sexual choices. Embarrassing somebody, calling them a hoe, calling them whatever other derogatory term, promiscuous, whatever, does not inspire them to say, you know what, I'm going to change my ways and live for Jesus. So let's not participate in that. And in our own lives, let's not guilt and shame ourselves. I encourage women to become aware of women in particular, because that's my focus group, but I do deal with men as well. All people need to be aware of their values, their choices, be in connection with your core values, be in connection with God, be in connection with the source of your value system, and make informed choices about what you believe and what you stand for, and try to be in congruence with that, so that you don't have that turmoil on the inside of you, which then spills over into your emotional health, spills over into your mental health, spills over into your relationships and every other area of health. So regardless of whether you are very sexually active or you have no drive at all, both extremes can be helped if you just seek for help. I just want to thank you all so much. And just in case you want to know more about this topic, I will be talking about it for probably 2 hours next week, Saturday, in a workshop that I will be hosting online. You can ask more, or maybe I'll just put the registration link in the chat if I may, Division Director. Thank you so much. Back over to you, Madam Division Director.
Thank you so much, Dr. Linnis Joseph. Sexual health. We are interested in being all-round healthy people. We want to be healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, sexually, all the alleys. Yes, it's important, all-round health. And this evening, I would like to say that I am so pleased with all our presenters. You all went into great depth. You did not just skim the surface. You gave us great content, great detail, and I'm very appreciative. At this time, I would like to ask if anyone has a burning question for any of our presenters this evening. They are all experts in their own right. So is there a question that you would like to ask? We probably have time for 1 or 2 burning questions. I'm not seeing any posted in the chat. So I'm giving you this opportunity now. Anybody like to unmute?
I would like to unmute and start the questioning.
Sure.
Well, since we have the dear esteemed Dr. Joseph on camera, I would pose this question to her. Do you think, doctor, that we should teach sexual health to children in primary school?
Thank you very much for that question, Justice. I think that when we educate, we take a proactive decision as to what information we want people to have. So I personally believe in giving sex education, just like mental health education, just like financial literacy. I believe that all of these things need to be taught to children as early as possible, especially now when we have the internet that is so open and available to them. When I was a child, I found a porn magazine when I was, like 10 years old in somebody's cupboard. It took some extreme circumstances for me to come across that. Nowadays, a child as early as 3 could accidentally enter the wrong thing on a phone and come up with a porn video. So we have to remember that children are not in the dark. And what's worse, like I would have intentionally made a lot of effort to screen my children's devices, limit their access to devices, to put blocks on certain websites. I did all of that. And then I sent them to school. And in school, some friend, mother didn't do all of that. And some friend gonna show them everything I was trying to protect them from. So I think that us taking a proactive step to say, this is what I want you to know, this is the truth, this is the actual fact, we now empower ourselves to have a say in what our children know, think, believe. We get a vote, we get a chance, as opposed to us trying to come talk to teenagers and try to tell them that what they already believe is wrong, and now replace it with what I'm now trying to tell you on the back end. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I have a question. If I'm right.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. What is the youngest age that we could really, what is the cutoff point that you could really start putting a child to sit down and explaining? I don't think I would do that 3. So, and this is directed to Dr. Linnis Joseph. What age is safe for parents to start talking to children about sex and sexuality?
Thank you for that question, Toastmaster Marlon. I would say that with children, and I am not an expert in child psychology, let me put that disclaimer out there, but as a parent and a general practitioner, I think when the child starts showing curiosity or starts asking questions, it's the time to answer their questions honestly. So if they're asking questions or if they're showing that they have some kind of curiosity about something sexual, you don't know where they got it, what they're thinking, you don't know if they happen to get exposed to something, that's when you would want to step in and say, okay, what, have that conversation. Where did this come from? What did you hear? What are you doing? You definitely want to find out if anybody is touching them, interfering with them, harming them in any way. But you want to be careful that when you're asking those kinds of questions, you don't come across in a way that sounds like you're accusing or like they did something wrong, right? And this I can say, personal experience, my first encounter with questions about sex when I was I may have been 3. I think a neighbor's boy child who was also about 3 did something or the other. Probably he touched me or something. I honestly don't remember the event. I just remember my mother talking to his mother. And I remember the fear. And I remember feeling like I did something wrong. And in therapy, I identified that as my first sexual trauma. And I didn't do anything and I don't know what was done, but how we speak to children about these things is very important in terms of the impression that you leave on them and how much you can influence them. So if a 3-year-old is masturbating, you may want to talk to your doctor, get some kind of advice as to how to address it. But if they ask you a direct question, I would lean towards being appropriately honest in your answers.
All right, great. Thank you.
Dr. Linnis, I would like to piggyback off of that question and ask you, do you encourage children to masturbate if you realize that they are into that, or would you, how do you really deal with that? Are you going to, do things to ensure that they stop, or is that a personal choice of the parent? What would you advise? I'm talking about a small child now, an underage
It's
child.
getting hot in here. I reiterate that I am not a child psychologist or a professional and expert in this field. I would want to defer. Dr. Maharaj, are you an expert in this area, child psychology or psychiatry?
No, I am not as well.
Okay. So what I would personally believe, and this would be a personal opinion, the value system of the parents and the family and the culture has a very strong influence in terms of how we raise our children and what values we want to give them. So if the parents believe that masturbation is wrong and that it should never be encouraged or allowed, I'm not going to tell the parents to let their child do something that they themselves don't believe in, right? If the parents believe that, oh, that's a normal, natural thing, yeah, do it as much as you want. I also would not want to encourage parents to encourage it. If they discover it and they do it is one thing, but for you to be like, yeah, you need to explore and you need to play with it and you need to, especially when they are young and they can, so a young child experiencing pleasure, touching themselves, getting fascinated by it, can easily just go to extremes and then become obsessed with it. So how do you teach a young child moderation? I believe personally, as a parent and as a doctor, that we need to handle things like that on an individual basis. You know, speak to the doctor, talk to the pediatrician, because sometimes, if I remember correctly, childhood masturbation is one of the signs of trauma in a child. It's one of the things that children do when they have been traumatized, and it's not always a sexual trauma. It's one of the coping skills. So when you see a child doing childhood masturbation, which often looks like the squeezing of the legs together, or you might see them rubbing themselves on an object, or you notice that they're doing something that you as an adult, you know that that is bound to be giving them some kind of pleasurable feeling. You kind of have to observe, where is it coming from? Is it just that they happen to notice a nice feeling and they're giving into it? Or is it that they seem to be obsessed, like they're trying to cope with something or to deal with something specific? So I think on a case-by-case basis, if you think it's problematic, we need to go to a child psychologist, explore what's happening behind the scenes, where did this come from, you know, and not overreact like my mother did and create trauma where a situation was not traumatic and it was just a child doing what children do. So we can remove a dangerous situation or remove a child from a questionable environment without adding trauma to the situation. So I would just be delicate in how I handle it, because I think every person I have spoken to who masturbates, I've never heard of somebody just stopping because their parents say stop. When they were forced to stop, when the parents made a whole big thing about it, I think the only result, just from my experience, the only result that came out of that was shame and guilt and hiding. And then you ended up with a loss of communication between the parent and the child, because the child wants to do this thing, you don't want them to do it, so they just hide and do it. So I think we have to think of the bigger picture. What do we want to accomplish, and how we approach this, what results may happen. And I would want you to consult a professional in a situation like that. I hope I answered your question properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Linnis. You did shed a lot of light there. For me, you talked about using touching as a coping mechanism. I never heard that before, knew of that. So that really, helps me to look at that situation from a different angle. Thank you so very much for your contributions. Thank you. Thank you for your questions, members of the audience. And at this time, I would like to say that we would need to wrap up our seminar this time. I trust that you all enjoyed the sessions, and I would still like us to have very quick feedback from 2 attendees. Very quick feedback. What did you think about the session? Just in 30 seconds. Would anyone like to give feedback?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Asanas McEwen, and I definitely enjoyed the session. I learned a lot from mental health with Dr. Maharaj, Dr. Christoher Romain, I'm going to say Dr. Dianne Charles, but Toastmaster Dianne Charles and Dr. Linnis Joseph, you all did an excellent job, and I learned from each one of you professionals, and I want to say thank you very much. It was indeed an informative session.
Thank you so very much.
Actually had two other persons here with me listening to the session.
Okay.
Sentiments echoed.
Thank you. I think you are the Toastmaster, not so? Susan Dowdy, are you a Toastmaster?
No, my daughter did the youth program that was on
Okay.
in September, between August and September.
YLP.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be in touch with you, Susan Dowdy, YLP. Which team your daughter was in? Do you remember? Or what's your daughter's name?
And Dowdy.
Okay, and yes. All right, so feel free to reach out to me or I'll reach out to you. Toastmasters is a great place to be. Once you're 18 and over, you can become a member of one of our 20 Toastmasters clubs in Trinidad and Tobago. Some clubs meet in person and some clubs meet online via Zoom. Clubs meet on different days. So there must be some club that can meet your needs. Do we have anyone else with us who is not yet a Toastmaster? Suzette, I saw that you were trying to say something. Go right ahead, please. You were unmuting just now.
Thanks for the invitation. I will take you up on it, but just not right now.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
You be sure and let me know when. But in the meantime, feel free to visit until you're ready to become a member. Do we have anyone else who is not yet a Toastmaster? I would just like to give you a little special recognition. Very happy to have you with us. No one else? Okay, I know I'm seeing one prospect who is almost a Toastmaster. Welcome, Shirley. But is there anyone else? Toastmaster Charlene? You said something?
Pleasant evening, one and all. Let me show my face. I was out, so I came in just as you were introducing Dr. Christoher. But what I have experienced so far, I think we need to have our own health symposium because everything here is on a holistic level.
Yes.
Dr. Christoher was dynamic. Is Dr. Dianne and Dr. Lynn. I don't know the presenters before. I could only speak on who I heard.
Yes.
And just on based on what I've heard, I think we as Toastmasters need to have an open forum.
Yes.
If not via in person, I believe in person. And we need to strategize how we're doing that. This is great. It's fantastic. Keep it up.
Thank you so very much for your feedback, Toastmaster Charlene Ford. Presenters, you have heard it. Great job. A big thank you to all of you. And the announcements that I wanted to make, I would ask you to please read them yourself. They're on the second page of the agenda. Well, the agenda is on the first page, announcements are on the second page. And the most important, I think, of those announcements, our 40th anniversary of Toastmasters in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are going to be having a gala dinner on the 15th of December to celebrate that. Tickets priced at $300. You will need to pay in advance. You'll be given a link to pay for your ticket. And we are going to be meeting at MIC from 5 p.m. on the 15th. It's a Sunday. Non-Toastmasters are invited as well. So buy a ticket for your friends, your family. Make this your club Christmas dinner event for the year even. Let's get together and celebrate the 40th anniversary of Toastmasters in Trinidad and Tobago. So you are going to be hearing a lot more about that in the coming weeks. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, with that being said, I would like at this time to say that it was my pleasure coordinating and moderating this seminar. I learned just like you did, and I'm sure that we are going to have another one at some point in time in the future. So may God richly bless all of you. And at this time, I would like to declare that we are adjourned. The recording for this session should be posted on our Facebook pages and in our chat